Good evening. I call this Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 meeting of the Hampton City School Board to order. Ms. Bowers, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Afanja?
Here.
Ms. Banks Gray? Here. Ms. Cherry?
Here.
Dr. Mason?
Here.
Mr. Samuels?
Present.
Dr. Woodhouse?
Here.
Mr. Kilgore?
Here. Let the record show that all board members are present. I now ask if you would please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance led by our student representative, Paul Carnack.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We now move on to adoption of the agenda, item 1.03. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Cherry and a second from Mr. Samuels. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Bowers, would you please call for the vote?
Ms. Cherry?
Aye.
Dr. Mason?
Aye.
Mr. Samuels?
Aye.
Dr. Woodhouse?
Aye.
Ms. Afanja?
Aye.
Ms. Banks Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Kilgore?
Aye, the motion carries. We now move on to the consent agenda, item 2, which consists of item 2.01, personnel report number 21-06, and item 2.02, minutes of the school board meeting of March 3rd, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Samuels and a second from Dr. Woodhouse. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Bowers, would you please call for the vote?
Dr. Mason?
Aye.
Mr. Samuels?
Aye.
Dr. Woodhouse?
Aye.
Ms. Afanja?
Aye.
Ms. Banks Gray?
Aye.
Ms. Cherry?
Aye.
Mr. Kilgore?
Aye, motion carries. We now come to the part of our meeting which is a public hearing, so I will call the public hearing to order. The hearing is for any comments on our proposed FY22 operating budget. Ms. Bowers, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
We do not.
Okay. Well, then I will close the public hearing. I did want to point out, since we're talking about our budget, that we have been joined this evening by the Honorable Chris Bowman here, who is a Hampton City Council member, so thank you for joining us. I now move on to superintendent and staff reports, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. At this time, I would ask that Ms. Brittany Dortch, our CFO, if she would come forward and provide the board with specific updates to the superintendent's recommended FY 2021-2022 budget. Ms. Dortch. Take just a moment to get the file onto the screen there.
Yep.
May have just a technical glitch there. But what I will share with members of the board, that included on board docs, you have this particular presentation, and also for the viewing audience, we'd ask if you'd like to follow along with Ms. Dortch, our CFO, that if you go to the board doc, you will find listed under superintendent and staff reports, updates to the superintendent's recommended FY 2021-2022 budget, and the presentation is located there as well. So all individuals who are desiring access should have it online with us.
So I will go ahead and start. So good evening, Chair Kilgore, Vice Chair Woodhouse, members of the school board, and the Hampton community. Tonight it's my pleasure to provide an update to the fiscal year 2022 Superintendent's recommended budget, which was presented on March 3rd of 2021. Tonight's updates will focus primarily on the local contribution. So overall, the recommended budget totaled on March 3rd, $301 million. And this was for all 6 funds, which includes the School Operating Fund, Fund 50, Food and Nutrition Services, Fund 51, Reimbursable Projects, Fund 60, Rental Income, Fund 65, Student Activity, Fund 93, and Athletics, Fund 94. And within that recommended budget, it included a 5% compensation increase, market adjustments for teachers and support staff, and other recommendations included, but were not limited to, an increase to minimum wage to $11 per hour. Included in the recommended proposed budget, which has been updated, is a draft of the fiscal year 2022 compensation plan, and that can be found on page 162. Since the March 3rd presentation, the General Assembly released the direct aid template, and updated projections for the local contribution have been received. The updates only impact the School Operating Fund, Fund 50, as indicated on this slide. It is recommended that the budget is revised to incorporate the additional $1.8 million of revenue for a total school operating fund of $236 million and a total overall budget for all 6 funds of $303 million. And the source and recommended plan for this additional revenue will be discussed tonight. So the school operating fund is projected to increase by another $1.8 million since the March 3rd presentation. The largest revenue source continues to be state revenue, which makes up 54% of the budget. And when you include state sales tax, this increases to 64% of the budget. State funds and sales tax projections have been updated based on the General Assembly's direct aid template. And it is noted that there is no change in the overall total state revenue and state sales tax. However, it is noted that an adjustment was made for the allocation between state revenue and sales tax. So as you look on the slide, you'll note that there is a $1.1 million decrease in state revenue, but this is offset by a $1.1 million increase in state sales tax. So total impact is $0 to the original proposal. The total $1.8 million increase to the school operating fund is directly related to our local contribution. So local funds represent 34% of the school operating fund, and they're received from the city of Hampton based on a funding formula that provides 61.83% of all residential related taxes, which include real estate, personal property, and utility taxes. As part of our budget development process, the City of Hampton and Hampton City Schools, we work closely together. And currently, we're both working on our proposals for next fiscal year. So we're in constant communication throughout this process. So based on the most recent projections for the local contribution, it is estimated that Hampton City Schools will receive $80.2 million in estimated local revenue. This is an overall increase of $3.2 million when compared to the original fiscal year 2021 school operating budget. $1.4 million of this increase was accounted for and presented on March 3rd. So tonight we will focus on the $1.8 million. Of this total increase, $1.2 million is recommended to be used to support debt service payments for future school renovation projects. And then the remaining $640,000 is recommended to be placed in contingency, and this will help to further protect the school division against any significant changes in expenditures or revenue estimates within the budget. In the event that there aren't any significant changes, we do recommend that the $640,000 be released for school projects within the school system. And this completes the update to the fiscal year 2022 superintendent's recommended budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dortch. Any questions to Ms. Dortch about the presentation or the information provided? All right. All good news then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman and members of the school board, that concludes superintendent and staff reports.
All right, we now move on to deliberation items, and the only item on our deliberation agenda this evening is the superintendent's proposed budget for FY 2021-2022. Do I have any comments from board members? All right. Yes, Mr.
Go ahead,
Sam.
No, go ahead.
Ms. Cherry.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, and I know it will be Dr. Smith,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
when we talk about the additional monies from the city, for which we are most grateful,
Absolutely.
I think it also may be important to help people understand how the city was able to provide that, if you could, just very briefly. To us.
Sure, absolutely. And one of the things that I think, as Ms. Dortch mentioned, and I want to just restate, that when you look at the fact that the funding formula and that we receive 61.83% of all residential related taxes, which includes certainly real estate, personal property, and utility taxes, and it speaks to an increase in that particular revenue line. And so then it brought forth to the school division additional revenue directly from the locality based upon the increase received. And as we know, the assessed values on I think the real estate side, certainly there's been a significant increase.
Exactly, exactly. And I just wanted the community to understand that, and just how fortunate we are as a school
right.
division to have a city council and city administration, including the city manager,
That's right.
right on down, that really support the school division. And it's important to not only Hampton City Schools, but our community based in terms of everything we do in this city, because
Absolutely.
it speaks volumes to what their commitment is, and it certainly is appreciative by
Absolutely.
the school board.
It does. And to your point, Ms. Cherry, I'll also add that the city manager made herself available with a busy schedule on last Friday to come over to the office and to have that conversation with me in person. And so I want to express with sincere gratitude my appreciation for her commitment, and certainly city council, but she wanted to express that to me in terms of superintendent in person rather than communicate that via some electronic format.
Exactly,
So I
yeah.
appreciate the
I
partnership.
think that speaks volumes. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cherry. Very well said, and I concur. We're blessed in Hampton for a lot of reasons, and one of them is our relationship with our city council and also their commitment to invest in the students in this city. So, thank you. Mr. Samuels.
Last week I made my remarks, and I highlighted individuals from the finance department, which Ms. Dortch heads, and unfortunately I neglected to extend that appreciation to the entire staff, and they're in the audience today, because this takes the entire, as Dr. Smith would say, a team effort and a systems approach, and it includes all the members of that finance team working with Ms. Dortch and Ms. Vizel to make sure that we have a great budget. And so I just want to extend my sincere appreciation to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuels. Any other comments? All right, we move on to section 6 of our agenda this evening, which is informational items. And I will relay that our next meeting is next Wednesday, March 24th at 6:30. It will again be here at Jones Magnet Middle School, and that meeting is where the board is scheduled to vote on the superintendent's recommended budget. And then following that, our next meeting after that will be a work session on April 21st at the Rupert Sargent Building on 1 Franklin Street. Do I have any informational items from the superintendent?
No further information.
Do I have any informational items from board members? Yes. Mr.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Kilgore. I just want to acknowledge that March is Social Work Month. And so at this time, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Copeland and his entire social work staff for working with our children, especially, and Dr. Mason would concur with me, this trying time with the pandemic, ensuring that our children receive the appropriate services that they need to be resilient and to be successful. And as you know, Dr. Copeland program manages the McKinney program, which is the program to support our children that are homeless. And they have done a fantastic job this past year, and so I just want to acknowledge them. On another note, y'all may know that I'm an alumni of Norfolk State University. We won the MEAC last weekend,
Yes, you did.
and we are now off to the big dance.
That's right.
And so we will be playing tomorrow night. So if you're just watching TV, just support Norfolk State, the Spartans. Behold.
Thank you, Mr. Samuels. Any other comments or informational items from board members? Informational items from our student representative.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to take a quick moment to observe the state of our reopening in our schools. Thank you to our staff, our students, our faculty, and our administration who have thus far put together a very successful week. So I think I would be remiss without acknowledging that, especially as the student representative. And then other than that, just happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karnak. Without any further business in front of this board, this meeting is adjourned.